All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live and we are here for with Dr. L today on family-friendly, healthy eating options. I'm super excited to have Dr. L with us today because he's got all kinds of information for families who are trying to do the best they possibly can for their kids and themselves, their spouses, their significant others, and making sure that everybody has what they need nutritionally in order to optimize their life, their health, and specifically their brain, because Dr. L is a clinical neuroscientist. So Dr. L, thanks so much for being here with us today. As we've got some people filtering in, so I'm super excited to have you with us. So I apologize if I missed anything. Do you want to do a little welcome and introduce yourself a little bit?
Thanks, Kimberly, for the wonderful intro, and hello everybody for being here. Thank you. I'm excited that you have taken the initiative to come over here and take charge of your life and eating, which is actually supposed to be something very natural and simple, but seems to often be the most complicated thing about our daily activities. So I'm glad to be here. I'm a clinical neuroscientist. I had a private practice for 10 years, and I decided to switch to the prevention side of things. But while in practice, I helped families with children who had autism spectrum disorders, and I tried to figure out ways that they could go ahead and gain some control over the condition, and in some cases to actually be able to reverse the diagnosis in the first place and rewire the brain and make it be normal again. So I'm glad to be here. All right.
That's incredible. So I really love your story and your background. I know that we've chatted a lot about this, and the idea that you can sort of eat yourself well and feed your brain and your body in order to help your body recover from most conditions is really, I mean, the human body is an incredible instrument of being able to cure itself. We just need to give it the fuel in order to allow that chain reaction to happen. Is that sort of correct?
Exactly. I mean, your body has the ability to heal itself to a large degree. You just need to kind of provide the environment for it to do its work. So instead of getting in its way, it's best to stand out of its way and kind of aid it in the process. Nobody can do that job better. It's been designed over millions of years to be able to cope with its needs and do what it's supposed to do. And the best thing you can do is to make sure that you support it. And that comes from lifestyle. And that is the good news, because if it was any other way, then we would be in trouble, because there's a whole lot of things we don't know about the body, and there's a whole lot of things that we can't do for the body if it doesn't work right. So the fact that it can is a good thing.
All right. Well, I wanted to be a little bit interactive with the audience because I know we have a variety of people on the line. So if you are joining us, check for the chat. If you scan down to the bottom, you'll see a little bubble that says chat, and you'll be able to enter some information. And just let us know who you are and where you're from, and say welcome, or just say hello, and we will welcome you to the webinar. We're glad to have you guys with us. And I just want to know a little bit about like what kinds of people we have from around the world and where people are from. So again, go down to the bottom, you'll find a little chat bubble. And if you click on that, we will be able to see you guys responding back. All right, so we have Jerry from New York. Welcome, Jerry. We have Barb from Indiana. Barb says, I have a pediatric therapy clinic. So fantastic, that's gonna be awesome for you. We have Sarah from San Diego as well. So glad to have you here with us. All right, so just keep them coming. We definitely wanna involve you guys in the conversation so that we can make sure that we address your questions specifically. But before we do that, I want to turn it over back to Dr. L because I want you to share a little bit about your background and history. It wasn't always easy for you. You didn't always know this stuff. You actually have a really cool story from childhood about growing up with some of these challenges in nutrition and how it affected your own health. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, I definitely did have a rough start. And in fact, a lot of the stuff that we talk about is not only raising happy and healthy kids, but also for the poor parents to be able to actually enjoy the process as well. Because we have this wonderful idea of trying to raise kids, and then in the process of raising kids, we get so caught up with the details of it. Sometimes we forget to stop and actually enjoy the process of raising the kids and seeing them lead full lives. So it's very important to have that. Now, when I was growing up, I had ADHD, and of course, at the time, ADHD was not a diagnosis or a condition that the medical community was aware of. And I also grew up in Iran. So the combination of the two was not a good situation, because as the Iran and Iraq war started, the only way that you could actually not get shipped to the front lines to fight Saddam Hussein was to basically go ahead and pass the national university entrance exams. And only like the top 1% of the kids in the entire country would be eligible to be able to participate in that. And with having ADHD, of course, it's one of those conditions that is categorized under learning disabilities. So that did not serve me well. And of course, the stress and the pressure was on my parents to somehow make sure to fill in the gap, which was very difficult for them as well. So I was usually in the top 3 people in my class. So it wasn't, but it took a lot of effort. It took a lot of family tension, and that affected the family's interactions. So that's basically how I grew up. And luckily, as you can see, I'm over here. I didn't have to go to the war, and I survived, and I went on to get my degree and get my postdoctoral in neurobehavioral disorders. And then in that process, I pretty much discovered that what I suffered from all my life was actually attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. Now, part of a big component of your brain development happens to be that you need to have the proper fuel and stimulation for the brain to develop properly. And when those things get compromised, then little by little, your body finds different and alternative ways to grow and develop. And sometimes that is not apparent until the kids are asked to do something that is more related to their frontal cortex, which is the cognitive skills, the executive functions of focus and concentration and behavior. And then in those particular cases, that's when you truly first the true signs and symptoms of this brain that hasn't been developing the way it's supposed to. So that's what we used to work on. And then, of course, this is just one part of it about the brain development, but then the additional part is that the rest of your body also is involved as well. And because your brain controls the function of everything else in your body, if it doesn't function properly, then there are other manifestations within your body too. And growing up, it's a cycle, because your digestive system is the one that is producing the nutrients that your brain needs. And most of your neurotransmitters, the chemicals that actually connects your neurons and send messages back and forth, are not actually in your brain, they're actually in your gut. So if you have an unhealthy gut, it's going to affect your neurotransmitters. And if your neurotransmitters are affected, then your brain is going to also be affected by that too. So there's all kinds of these cycles and mechanisms that kind of play into each other and affect things. But where it truly begins is your nutrition. And as you grow up, you know, the way we have the Western diet, the way we have the lifestyles, what ends up happening is oftentimes there are a lot of rush. The nutritional quality and content of the foods kind of goes down, and things get sacrificed in the name of convenience. And as they get sacrificed in the name of convenience, we also end up with additional problems. Like, for instance, we know that childhood obesity is an all-time high in the Western world. We know that there's mental health concerns that are affecting society at the school level as well as the adult level. And these things kind of start early on. And if we can control our nutrition, there is a lot that we can do for our health, for our society, and the cost that is associated with both of those as well.
Awesome. So I know that it ties back to health and mental health, but also nutritional, physical health as well. Childhood obesity, as you manage. Did you say it's at an all-time high now?
It is. And speaking of obesity, the other thing that kind of it reminded me of is about 7 years ago, I was doing a blood test for health insurance reasons. And the results were so horrible that the insurance company decided that they're just not going to insure me.
This is your own blood test.
This is my own blood test. And part of the concern was that my cholesterol was way over 300. And they thought that I either had to take medication, which I didn't want to do, or I was just too high risk, basically. And that wasn't the main concern, though. My main concern was that growing up, my family always had a very strong center, and there was an extended family attached. And my grandparents used to have families come with them that would stay with them all summer long, and people that weren't even related. And to this day, those people look at my family as part of their family, as an extension of their family. And I kind of wanted to continue that legacy. And growing up, I thought, when I'm going to have my kids, I'm going to be that center figure. I'm going to go ahead and build these networks and families around my family. And then with this news that I got from the blood test, it was so bad that there was a big chance that my 2-year-old son, I might not be there for his graduation, for his wedding, or even to see my own grandkids. And that became something that made me kind of wake up and kind of shook me to the ground to realize that, I need to do something for this. And what happened 7 years ago wasn't the first time that this had happened. In fact, I had been battling triglycerides and cholesterol and things like that all my life, ever since I was 19 years old. And the advice from the medical doctors back then was that you need to go on a low-fat diet, which now we understand that is not exactly true, because it's not just that fat converts to fat. There's all kinds of ways. And the bigger culprit in my story was the triglycerides. And it kept on rising.
I know that you mentioned triglycerides, and I know about cholesterol. Like, you have the good cholesterol and the bad cholesterol, but that's about all I know about it. And then there's the triglycerides, and I've heard about them, but I really don't know anything about them. So what do triglycerides indicate?
All right. So triglycerides is another form of lipid, basically. And what ends up happening is
that?
Yes.
Okay.
But what ends up happening is you have this glycerin molecule. There, you get 3 glycerin molecules that is attached to a phospholipid. And without going into too much biochemistry in it, triglycerides are a symptom of improper sugar metabolism. And the trouble is that oftentimes people are looking at the traditional markers of cholesterol and blood sugar, and these things can go on for decades before really showing real problems. And the fact of the matter is that if you go ahead and have this continue, the problem can arise in different places. It can show up in autoimmune disorders. It can show up as digestive problems. It can show up as memory and brain issues. It can show up as cardiovascular disease, which leads to heart attacks and strokes. It can be related to cancers, definitely has a role in diabetes. So most of the inflammatory processes and diseases that we suffer from in the Western Hemisphere seem to come from this issue that sugar is going unaddressed, and then through a process and the lifestyle and everything else is causing massive inflammation in the body. And in that inflammation, we're creating damage. And we're letting it go for far too long before we start being proactive about it. And then at the time when we decide to be proactive about it, we are basically reacting to the markers of things like heart disease and stroke and cancer, which is oftentimes a little bit too late. And there are things you can do to make sure that you eliminate or not have them in the first place.
Awesome. And that's where your passion comes in, because I know, as you and I were talking about it, not just helping people who are, in their either middle age or, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and they are already overweight. That is something that needs help. But really, your passion is helping parents of children, give them healthy eating options. And it's sort of a 1-2 punch. Like, you got to get the parents to buy into the healthy, as well as make sure that they're giving healthy to their kids at the same time. Is that right?
I'll give you 2 examples of it. Growing up, I was a very frail boy. So in order for my dad to kind of get me to eat something, he suggested to me to take a white toast and rub butter on it, and then add sugar on it, and then eat it, because I wouldn't eat the butter, and this was his way of kind of getting extra calories in me, basically.
Okay. So that wasn't up, right? Like, you're trying to put the meat on your bones.
So that was his way of trying to give me advice. Then we had the medical doctor who said, go have a low-fat diet. So my parents went ahead and got non-fat milk and Frosted Flakes and orange juice and Pop-Tarts, which all were fat-free. But in the process, I'm not taking the fat, but I'm dumping massive amounts of sugar into my system, creating a pre-diabetic condition for myself, basically.
I can see that.
So that was from the professional side of things. Then from the parent side of things, when I was in clinic, I was suggesting to one of the moms that the child needs to have more omega-3s. And I suggested, why don't you try something like salmon, for instance? And the mom said, oh no, we don't fish cook or any type of seafood because I hate the smell of fish. So this is from the other side of things, that the parent's lifestyle is now affecting the child inadvertently too.
So while the child might have needed salmon, or that would have benefited their diet, the mom was like, nah, I just don't cook it because I don't like the smell. Is that right? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
So maybe some other options.
Yeah, so there's a whole spectrum of it, and I don't mean to make the parents feel guilty.
No.
God knows they're actually the superheroes in this story. I'm just basically the sidekick that's trying to help them along, basically. But the reality is that you need to have the right information, but you also have to have some level of support and accountability, that all of it comes together and stays consistent with the message so that you get a consistent result.
Okay.
And when the system is not there of having the knowledge, the support, and the accountability, what ends up happening is you don't get consistent results, or you get the wrong results, basically.
All right. And now I know that you have a program for parents of kids, which is phenomenal. I've actually seen it, and I love what you offer. It talks all about how to eliminate brain fog and keep focus in your life, which is good for kids. It's good for parents. I mean, God knows I'm an entrepreneur, and having brain fog is like one of the biggest things, right? Being able to stay focused and not get shiny object syndrome. So I love what you offer for both the parents and the kids. And it's called Mastering Healthy Eating. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that kind of toward the end, but I want to be sure that that since you talked about support and accountability, I wanted to share that if you guys stay till the end, you're going to hear a little bit more about Dr. L's program, which can give you that support and accountability and keep you on track for yourself and for your kids and for your entire family. So phenomenal. Okay, so let's get back to it. We were talking about how you can feed, how the parents can do the right thing by feeding the kids what they need nutritionally. And do the kids like the food? Do they enjoy? Are there things like that you're suggesting that they really like? Does it taste like Frosted Flakes to them, or what's the scenario there?
This is kind of came from my own trials and tribulations of trying to find the right diet for me that actually would be promoting health as well, and something that I could keep up long term, because Mastering Healthy Eating is not a dieting class, basically. So the purpose of it is to understand how your body functions, so regardless of settings, you can choose the right foods for it. Now, that means that you don't necessarily have to say, I'm never going to eat this food again, or that you never have to starve yourself or do these dangerous things that fad diets bring about. So it is something that by understanding your body, you can sustain it, work with it, and do it for the rest of your life. And it will optimize your health, it will optimize your weight, your focus, development, all of those other things. So that's where the whole thing comes in. And it came from the fact that after I got that lab result 7 years ago, I decided, you know what, I need to eat to survive. Forget about eat. I'm a foodie, so I love eating different kinds of foods and trying different things. And I realized that those days are over. When I was 19, and when I tried the low-fat diet, eventually I gave up and I said, you know what, I want to enjoy my life. And if I'm going to lose part of my life, it's going to be from the other end of it, and whether it happens to be 65 or 80, which both of them seemed really
far away. Yep.
I'm like, I'm not going to know which one was which, so I didn't care. So I went ahead and ate whatever I wanted to.
I know. I have a 17-year-old kid. It's the same. Yeah, absolutely. They're like, I don't know, like 30, 35 is really old. So.
Right. So then here I am in my early 40s, and here we go. Actually, no, it was late 30s, actually. And, there's this possibility of me not making it to his graduation. And I realized I need to eat to survive. So I went on this hardcore, low-fat, plant-based vegan diet, basically. And it was effective in some ways because in 90 days, my focus was on lowering the cholesterol and the fat markers. And in 90 days, what I did without use of drugs was bring my cholesterol from like 340 down to 180.
Wow.
And I felt good as far as energy. But then there's all these other things that I did. I created panic attacks in myself. I created arrhythmias, increased my risk of stroke 15%. There's all these other things.
Wow.
And bear in mind, I'm a physician. I aced my biochemistry, I aced my nutrition course, and I had been giving recommendations to patients through clinic for a decade. And I still was messing it up for myself. So this trial and error thing can have irreparable and irreversible causes neither. So I definitely urge people not to take matters into their own hand because your body is complex and just focusing on one marker or one thing is not the best thing to do. You want to make sure that you take care of your health. Now, if you take care of your health and there are some conditions that will not be addressed, then at that point, yes, you definitely have to seek medical professional advice so that you can actually control a medical condition. But going after your health and trying to be healthy is not a bad thing.
All right. But this diet that you were on, this crash diet where you were like, okay, I'm just going to eat to survive. I'm going to lower my cholesterol. It doesn't really sound all that sustainable. Like it doesn't sound like it would be something that you could just keep doing forever.
Yes, thank you. So what actually happened is I got the results. I was so ecstatic that I got the results that I wanted. I finally had the cure that I had struggling with for 20 years, basically. And the problem is little by little, those habits, the lifestyle, the advice, and the cooking that your parents have taught you, all of those things crept back into my life. So about 3 years ago, when I actually had another blood test for another insurance company, it showed that everything was just as bad as day one.
Oh.
All right. So it didn't help. In fact, the triglycerides were worse than ever.
Oh, no. Okay. All right.
So,
and that's even with the low-fat diet.
Right. And bear in mind, when I was 19 and I went on that low-fat diet, and then I decided to give up, the condition got so bad that when I got out of school, I was coming from clinic for my lunch break, and I was seeing my hands shake. I was like hypoglycemic. My mood was off. So I knew I was like pre-diabetic at the age of like 30 something. It was not a good situation. So I started introducing more proteins to the diet. And by adding proteins, I reduced that sugar spike that happens in your body, the insulin spike and the glucose. And what ended up happening is I masked the symptom of sugar metabolism. So I wasn't hypoglycemic anymore, and it was more stable. But that meant that the problem could continue to progress without me having the symptoms. And so that's how I ended up to 7 years ago where the numbers were all off again. And then 3 years ago, I decided this time I'm going to have to do something drastic, something different, something that actually makes sense, works with my body to identify what the true cause of it is. And the more research I did, the more I realized I don't have a fat and cardiovascular issue. I actually have a sugar metabolism issue. So I had to figure out how does sugar metabolism happen. Now, I do understand glycolysis and gluconeogenesis and Krebs cycle and all of these biochemical stuff, but I wasn't putting it into context. And I do have a strong evolutionary and anthropology background. So I kind of put all of that together along with the research. And I realized there's a reason why there are people on say a keto diet, which is like all fat, and there are people that are completely vegan or low fat, and they both swear by it. And you talk to dietitians and nutritional counselors, and they could give you completely different advice. And the reason for it is that long before we had this huge brain and the opposable thumbs and walking upright, the reason for our success was we were able to consume a variety of foods to survive. You could see people in the cold climates where there is no plants surviving. And then you could see people in the tropics surviving only on fruits and vegetables. So the natural conclusion was that because we are omnivores, we need to do an omnivore diet. But the situation that existed millions of years ago is very different than now. We have kind of muddled it all up now. We kind of mix it all up. We eat fruits when it's not fruit season. Like you would have a tropical fruit, like let's say a banana or a pineapple, when there's 3 feet of snow outside. And then so it didn't make sense. And then we have lifestyles that cause inflammation that shouldn't be there. And then when we get sick and we're supposed to have inflammation to remedy the problem and kill the germs, we go ahead and take anti-inflammatories and opioids basically to ease the symptoms. So we kind of do the reverse and really work against our bodies. So what I ended up doing is I started separating things and trying to figure out that, okay, it makes sense that during summer and springtime, you could have more of the carbohydrates in your diet, and then during winter and fall, because the plants are more scarce, you could survive more on things like fats. So you would be more of a hunting type of a thing. And you could see that cycle in anthropology as well. So it made sense. So what I ended up doing was I came up with these 3 basic rules. The fundamental rules for this diet was, number 1, I want to make sure that I separate the carbohydrates. And when I say carbohydrates, I'm talking about things that have high sugar content. So green, leafy, and stalky vegetables is not what I consider carbohydrates. That falls more into fibers. Although it is categorized under carbohydrates, that is not the bad carbohydrates. Those are the good carbohydrates, and we'll talk about that more. But what ends up happening is you want to separate your fats from your carbohydrates. Number 2, you want to make sure that you give your body a chance to burn the fuel that you put into it. Like right now, when you look at it, the standard recommendation is to eat consistently and frequently, every 4 to 6 hours, maybe even snacks in the middle. So you're constantly putting food into your system, which causes your body to naturally and rightfully go ahead and say, okay, I got food, let's go ahead and put it away for the time where we actually need it. But then that time where we actually need it never comes. So we keep on storing and we keep on storing. And guess what happens? Obesity goes up because we're constantly in the storage mode. So you need to separate your carbs from your fats. You need to make sure that you give your body enough time to burn the food that you consume. And lastly, when we talked about good carbohydrates and bad carbohydrates, every food group has good ones and bad ones. And we want to make sure that we use the good ones, which are anti-inflammatory, and avoid the bad ones as much as possible, which are pro-inflammatory. So those are the foundations and fundamentals of this entire program.
Okay, so we need to separate the fats and the carbs. By separate, you mean just time-wise, right?
Well, I mean, that's where it starts. It starts time-wise. It doesn't mean that you can't have carbs. It doesn't mean you can't have fats.
Because you're omnivore in your diet. You can have both, which I like because it doesn't really offer a huge restriction of like you can never have a Girl Scout cookie again in your life. That's not on your diet. Like omnivores, even though back in the old days they didn't have Girl Scout cookies, they probably should have. Okay, like there is nothing that's actually off limits, so there's no deprivation in this particular diet. You just need to eat smart and have the things like at the right times. Is that right?
Exactly. And it allows you to plan things. So if you know that you have a craving for something, you go ahead and you plan to have it when the time is right for it.
Okay. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2 is burn off the calories as you feed them to your body. So tell us a little bit about that. How does that happen?
So whenever you, as I mentioned, whenever you eat something, your body has to go through a whole cycle. Your digestive system has to fire up. It needs to go through its whole process from your mouth all the way down to the bottom of the digestive system. And it has to go ahead and process this. That takes energy. That converts your body's mode into a completely different mode where it's supposed to break down the food, it's supposed to absorb the food, it's supposed to store the food. So you can't do that at the same time. If you've heard, like your mom might have said, don't go jumping in the swimming pool and swimming after you just eat.
My mom definitely said that. I always thought that was crazy advice. Is that true?
Well, the thing is, if you go ahead and you go and jump in the swimming pool, you need your muscles to do the work.
Right.
Muscles need energy.
Right.
But at the same time, your digestive system is busy as a muscle itself, trying to get rid of or store and process the energy that you just put into it. So you just don't have enough resources to address both of them. So the one that gets the short end of the stick ends up getting cramps, ends up getting brain fog, ends up with a host of other symptoms.
So she was right all along. Moms are smart. Moms are smart.
We just don't listen, that's all.
Oh, I listened. I just don't know if I actually applied. All right. And number 3 is you talked about good carbs and bad carbs and good fats and bad fats. And that's number 3.
Right. So fats there's no evil when it comes to these food groups. We've been consuming these for eons, and there's good reason for that because our body needs it, is made up of these things, and we need to make sure that we consume them in the right amount and right proportions of the right types. And what ends up happening is our brain is super smart. We find ways to maximize things that taste best for us. But just because something tastes really good to us, that doesn't mean that it's always in the best interest of our body. Now, I'm not saying that eat dull and bland foods. I'm saying that we need to make sure that we eat them in the right way. So the pro-inflammatory things cannot be mixed with things that end up being stored in your body. The last thing you want is the fats in your body to contain lots and lots of toxins and carcinogens, things that cause cancer. So you definitely want to separate that up. So good carbs and bad carbs, good proteins, bad proteins, they all, just like anything else, there is a gradient of quality to these things. And by choosing the ones that are of higher quality, you tend to go ahead and optimize your body, give it the right tools, give it the best tools. You could have like an old beat up hammer, or you could have the state of the art power hammer, basically. Why not use the power hammer? You can do more with it.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so the holidays are coming. We're coming upon some really serious bonding time with family, which usually revolves around food and food choices and lots of foods. So when we're faced with that kind of thing, if we're parents and we're in control of like what goes on the table, what kinds of choices can we make? And if we're guests and we just get what kind of shows up, like what other kinds of choices can we make? So what are some family-friendly eating options for the crew that's out there right now? And thanks, guys, for staying on. We appreciate you being there. We've got a bunch of new people that have joined us, and I'm glad you're here. Shoot a note in the chat box where you're from, and we'll be glad to welcome you. But share with us now, like what we can do as far as the holidays go to make family-friendly, healthy eating choices.
Right. So the good news, first of all, is that the holiday season is just that. It's a season. It is not a substitute for life and lifestyle. So you can take heart that if you have a good lifestyle, if you have healthy habits, you can go through a holiday season and come out the other end, and you will continue to improve your health and stay healthy, despite what you ate during the holidays. So that's good news number 1. The good news number 2 is that if you understand that by going through the holidays, if you apply those principles that I just talked about, by definition, you are going to have a reduced negative impact on your body. So when we're talking about, for instance, let's say Thanksgiving is coming up this week. When we're talking about Thanksgiving, you have the turkey, which traditionally happens to be a low-fat source of protein. But then we end up adding other things to it, which happens to increase the fat or increase the carbohydrates in there, like the sweet potatoes, for instance, in there. So, and then you add marshmallows on top of that, So make a choice of whether you want to stick with the fat or you want to stick with the carbohydrates.
Okay, so just separate them. Like if you're going to have the sweet potatoes, then don't have the fats as much. Maybe.
Right.
Okay. All right. And then potatoes, like mashed potatoes are like a big thing. What category do those fall in? Those are heavy carbs, right?
Those are heavy carbs. And then the other thing about carbs is the absorbability of it, how fast your body can absorb it. If it gets absorbed really fast, like juices, for instance, like sodas, like these things that get absorbed really fast, they have a much more dramatic effect on your body when it comes to switching it into storage mode.
Okay.
So if your objective is to lose weight, for instance, and then you consume these things that send your body into massive storage mode, and it's going to take a long time for it to get out of that mode, then that's probably not the best time to be consuming lots and lots of calories.
Okay.
Now, by the same token, I don't ever recommend starving yourself of calories. Your body needs a certain number of calories per day, and you want to consume it. So you hear people that talk about, for instance, fasting. A biggest mistake that people who do fasting make is they think that they get to reduce their calories by fasting, and that is not true.
Really?
If you reduce your calories, then you have to get that from someplace. And if your body is looking looking in your body any place for energy, the fats are usually harder to gain access to. So as a result, what your body will do is first go for the readily available sugar reserves, and then right after that, it's going to go for things like your muscles.
Got it.
You actually long-term can lose muscle mass, which is a very dangerous thing. It lowers your metabolic rate, which causes you to gain more weight, which causes you to not have to, in the future, not be able to consume as many calories. It's a vicious cycle. It causes all kinds of thyroid issues and hormonal problems, and the list goes on, basically.
And last time we talked, you actually pointed out that it's something that I just didn't even process, but I always think of muscles like, all right, you're going to lose muscle, but you can build that back up again. One of the muscles that's really important in your body is actually your heart muscle, right? So you can actually lose muscle from all kinds of parts of your body. Is that correct?
Right. So you're not necessarily thinking muscles, okay, I'm going to lose an inch off of my biceps, or, my pecs are not going to look as buff as, me going to the gym 5 days a week. When you're thinking about muscles, a lot of times these muscles tend to be stabilizers of your body. So you'll be more likely to kind of wobble and fall or get injured. To stabilize your joints, you'll be more likely to sprain your joints. Some of these muscles, like you mentioned, could be your heart muscle. It can become weaker, which is very dangerous. Your digestive system is muscle too. So if that muscle happens to get weaker, then you're going to have trouble pushing the food along, being able to digest and absorb it. So you're going to have digestive issues, which again is going to compound the problem even further. So when we talk about inflammation, we're not just talking about just gaining water. There's a whole host of diseases that inflammation is related to. When we're talking about losing muscle mass, it's not just that you're not going to look buff, that it actually is the most important metabolically active protein tissue in your body, basically.
Okay.
You don't want to lose that.
All right. Now for the kids, like they're consuming like wildfire during the holidays. Sometimes they've got, first it starts with Halloween, and then you got Thanksgiving, and then you've got all kinds of occasions with neighborhood parties and things during the holidays, because they're celebrating all kinds of different holidays. For those that celebrate Christmas, you have a big Christmas holiday coming, Kwanzaa, there's all kinds of different celebration activities that happen toward the end of the year. And then a big blowout for the grown-ups. For New Year's, you're just going to pile on a whole bunch of alcohol in a lot of cases. that's the bonus. I'm not saying I'm not not partake. I'm just saying that it seems to be like the perfect storm of calories and bad eating habits. But like we can make better choices along the way and help our kids make better choices along the way as well. And so just by following these three principles, which is separate the carbs and fats, burn the fuel that you feed us. And then the third one again is about the good and the bad version.
Yeah, reducing inflammation and increasing the anti-inflammatory effects of foods.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about how we can do those things. Like give me an example of how at, let's say, a Thanksgiving dinner, we could make a better choice than and what maybe a worse choice would be.
Right. Well, let me answer your first question about the kids first.
Oh yeah,
because there's focus right there. When it comes to the kids, their metabolism is a little different than ours. They're growing, so there are different metabolic and nutritional requirements for them. But it's actually pretty easy. It's easier than ours, and they also bounce back much more easily. It's just that you want to minimize the damage to their growing bodies as much as possible. And in that whole process, you want to make sure that they can follow your diet, but with some flexibilities for them geared towards them. So we focus on the adults, and then the kids get a sprinkle of extra fun basically added to it to make them happy and make us happy in the process too. So going through the holiday seasons, as we were talking about it, we're going to separate these. You're always going to have your protein for one thing. So whether you're having the proteins, let's say a Thanksgiving dinner, whether you're having it with the carbs or whether you're having it with the fats, either way it would work. It's just that when you're thinking about having it with the fats, you would tend to go for the more fatty cuts of meat, for instance. So I'll just give you a couple of examples of a dinner, for instance. You go to dinner and you realize, well, this is the time for you to be having your carbohydrates. So instead of having the extra marbled steak, you tend to have something that has to be much leaner. Maybe a grass-fed chicken, basically, or grain. So that would be something that you could focus on. You would be going for something that tends to be more lean. Now, if it happens to be the time when you want to consume fats, then yes, instead of having the leaner cut, you might go for thighs and drums, basically, because they're more fatty. And during the lean times, you would go for the chicken breast. So you would choose a different portion based on the fat composition to separate and minimize the fats or maximize the fats, depending on what your target is. So by understanding your body and scheduling and planning for it, you can go ahead and plan and schedule your meals, your events, and your alcohol consumption, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so now the alcohol consumption goes with the carbs, is that right? So if I'm eating, okay. All right,
yes.
So I gotta
and here's the thing that I think our audience needs to understand. Alcohol metabolism. Alcohol is such a toxic material when you give it to your body that your liver says, all right, we're going to put up a sign that says, sorry, we're under construction or out of service. We're only going to focus on getting rid of alcohol. So in the meantime, whatever else is going to be there is going to float around, either get stored as fat or whatever happens to be. But bottom line, we're focused on alcohol. So if you decide to drink, make sure that it comes way after you have consumed a nutritious meal. And also make sure that following it, whatever you eat, do realize that that is not really going to be absorbed in your body, which is why a lot of times people end up waking up in the middle of the night or the next day have all these different symptoms. It's not just the alcohol. It's the fact that your body is looking for energy and your liver is like, sorry, we're not working right now. We've got backup work to do, and that's all we're dealing with. So it's looking for energy and your liver's not delivering it, basically.
Okay.
If you eat something, oftentimes you'll feel that it just sits in your stomach and it doesn't feel good because your digestive system is out of commission until further notice.
Okay, so on New Year's Eve, a healthy dinner around 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock before starting to consume alcohol later that evening.
Depending on when you start consuming alcohol, that is too. So some people start at 6 or 7 o'clock. I don't know. But I'm hoping that they're going to have a glass at midnight, basically, and then 6 o'clock, yes, makes sense.
Okay, very good. All right, so separating that out at dinner time. So if you're going to go for the fats during the Thanksgiving dinner, then that's fine. Or if you're going to go for the carbs during Thanksgiving dinner, that's fine, but try to keep them separate. So what's funny is the American diet, the Western diet, as you call it, just seems to jam those two things together as often as possible, right? So you got a sandwich that's like bread, carbs, and then protein and fats, and then more bread, right? And they kind of squish all that together. Or, the famous avocado toast, which I'm a huge fan of, that's like fat and carbs squished together, right? And then like is ice cream also fat and carbs squished together, right? So how do we make as clever choices as possible for ourselves and our kids and our spouse? How do we make that happen as easy as possible?
That's a very good question. And it actually goes back to rule number 3.
Okay, which is inflammation.
Yes, well, part of the way to control the quality of the foods that tend to be more anti-inflammatory is by eating unprocessed, natural, whole foods. So when you start mixing things together, as in baking, most of the stuff happens to be processed.
Got it.
Whereas in nature, a lot of the foods that exist there, even if they have fats and carbs together, their balance and ratios and the enzymes that are there, they tend to be more favorable and help your body in the digestion of it, and tends to be less inflammatory. So that is the number one thing to consider about how to go about and reduce the inflammation and separate these things from each other. Look for things that are unprocessed, natural, and whole food.
Okay.
So if you can include those in your Christmas Eve, in your Thanksgiving, that would be the better way to go. Things that don't come out of a box, that they don't have an extended shelf life, that they have to be refrigerated, they spoil. Those are the things that you want, basically.
Okay. Yeah, good point. Somebody once said like a Twinkie has a shelf life of like 15 years or something like that. Highly processed. Okay.
Yeah, even the bugs don't want to go near it. So
right?
So
true. All right. You can leave it like out on a picnic blanket and nobody will be anywhere near it. You know, like it'll be still good 5 years later.
Having said that, there is nothing that says you cannot have the Twinkie or the alcohol or anything else that you want. But again, there's a time and a place for it. And people need to understand that as you consume natural, unprocessed foods and separating these categories, you're going to see their effects. Right now, a lot of people, when they feel hungry, they're not really hungry. They're actually thirsty. But they have muddled it up so much that they don't understand these different signals that their body is giving them. So by understanding those factors, then you realize that, ooh, you know what? If I end up having the Twinkie, although I crave it, tomorrow I'm not going to feel good. Something that most of us adults have come to realize from experience, that, hey, you know what, having tons and tons of things to drink and having to wake up at 6 a.m. is not going to be the best thing, basically. So we shy away from it. That's a natural process that is actually healthy and is good, and your body at any time is capable of doing that. And little by little, the longer you stay on this diet, the more refined and the better it looks. And eventually you're just not going to go towards a Twinkie because there's better tasting foods out there that you can have. It's going to give you the same satisfaction, if not more. And your taste buds are going to change.
That's true.
You know, when you see some of these food critics that they talk about these hint of this and a splash of that, and they can taste food like that, your palate is going to develop where you're going to be able to see these subtleties when you have quality food.
Awesome.
And so that's another side benefit of this diet.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I don't want to run out of time before we talk a little bit about your Mastering Healthy Eating program, because it is, I've heard some fantastic results coming out of it. I've had a chance to experience it myself. I had some really, really cool results come out of it for myself. And the people that are talking about it are saying how food tastes better, how they've optimized their own weight, how they've had, that they don't feel like they're limited in the amounts or the kinds of food that they can have, because you can really have, as you said, a Twinkie. You can have anything, you just have to time it right. And that they're getting some phenomenal results as far as brain health goes. Like they're feeling more focused. They're seeing their kids respond better with less things with ADHD and I don't know if I'm saying that correct, ADD. I don't really know the difference between those things. But their kids are reacting better by having more healthy food options available to them without feeling deprived at all. So can you share with us a little bit about what Mastering Healthy Eating is all about and how we can find out more?
Okay. Thank you. Mastering Healthy Eating is the program that basically I did myself first for 3 years. And after going through the process, I was seeing the results in myself. My testosterone levels improved to the point where currently my testosterone levels are 10 years higher or younger. I'm 10 years younger, according to my testosterone levels, than today. I knew my hair, my nail, those things ended up improving. My weight, I dropped about 20 pounds of weight. And oftentimes when I talk to people, that's one of the things that is getting their attention, or they're coming into the program because of they want to basically control their weight. But it's not necessarily, losing weight on this program is very easy. And also, it's not so much weight loss, but where you lose it from and optimizing your weight. We do not want you to lose your weight by losing your muscles. We want you to lose your weight by losing the fats. And then when you lose the fats, your body naturally will look fit. If a person loses their muscle mass, but they still have weight as in fat, they will look actually unhealthy. They will not look fit, even though their weight is down. So there is that distinction to understand. But anyways, so weight optimization, longevity, and anti-aging is part of the things, because your body becomes more efficient at getting rid of dead tissues, getting rid of cancer cells, things like that. So I did the program for 3 years. I saw the benefits and the effects of it, but I wasn't recommending it. It was my personal challenge. But then when I took the blood test, and people were commenting to me, they were asking me what I was doing, and I was sharing it with them. But when I did the test a few months ago, for the first time in my life, my triglycerides were normal, and my blood tests were showing phenomenal results. So that's when I had the solid evidence that, okay, well, it's not just how I'm feeling, but there's actual lab results and concrete evidence that shows that what I'm talking about and what I projected was going to happen did actually happen, that I'm on the right track. And I have been fine-tuning this for the past 3 years too. It wasn't a static thing that I've done. So even within the diet, there's a lot of tweaking and modifications that I have done to get it to the point where it is. And then because of the results and because of the lab tests, what I ended up doing is I started having a mastermind group, and I offered the program to them. And then I started, as you said, getting the testimonials from them about how they're feeling and the symptoms and things that, you know, wasn't really in front of their mind when they signed up for the course, but then they started seeing these benefits. And to this day, everybody that I know, I guess I should say, unfortunately, because our lifestyle is such that most of us are prone to obesity and weight gain, and we can stand to lose a few pounds. So just about everybody has lost weight, and not in a bad way. They actually have increased. Basically what they have done is their fat ratio has dropped, but not their protein and lean tissues. So that's a very good sign. And all of this without working out or starving yourself, or, you know, having these cravings and being told that no, you can't have it, or you're supposed to take these medications and pills and potions that are going to curb your metabolism, appetite, things like that. This is basically just literally working with your body, going to the grocery store, getting the foods that you need, and then knowing how to eat them, basically. It's simple as that.
And I love that this is all based on the grocery store, right? This is not, you're not selling like a diet product. It's not really some sort of pills or formulas that you take. It's really things that you can buy at the grocery store, things that you can prepare for your family, ways that you can choose the right things when eating at somebody else's house, and ways that you can choose the right things when eating out. It's
Correct.
really, you know, this is not a supplement or anything like that. It's just choosing
Right.
you know, better options.
If somebody was to come to your house and you had prepared a meal, they could sit down with you and eat it, and they would not know the difference between that meal and something that they might have gotten elsewhere, basically. So you know, because you understand the ingredients that you're putting into the foods from your grocery list, but to them, it wouldn't be really discernible, basically. And that's how realistic and real life the diet is, because you can basically take any food, even foods that you see at restaurants, and then go ahead and figure out how to prepare it so that it has those 3 principles associated with it.
Okay. And if they want to find out more, if the people want to find out more about this program, how do they find out more? I know that you have a couple of programs available, and then we're going to give them an option to download your free PDF, which is about lifting that brain fog. Is that correct?
Right. So I have a sample of basically a recipe along with some of the points about the third rule about the pro and anti-inflammatory things in that brain fog, so they could see the specifics of that.
Okay.
The three of them work really well together. As far as the program is concerned, the program is a 6-week course. It's an online course, and we go through A to Z of everything you need to know to understand your body, what you need to do, and what you need to look for in the grocery stores when you're cooking, and how to prepare the meals, and how to go about going and have something that is not only enjoyable, but repeatable over long term, basically. Then we also have support groups that in there we talk about challenges that each of us are facing. And then we actually discuss. I personally go on the support groups and discuss the details of, where the pitfalls are, what to look for, or how to approach it in a different way so that it doesn't become a problem. And we've done this a few times now, so it definitely shows. We're definitely aware of the challenges and the frustrations that people are facing. And we've come up with some good remedies and solutions for that. Absolutely. And then the last part is we have some other things that is basically a knowledge and library, so that they will have access to things like recipes. They will have access to different parts of the course. The online courses are recorded, so they can always go back and review them. So these are some of the things to help with the support. And then, of course, the accountability comes in the form of the assignments that we have from week to week, so that by doing those, you naturally build those into your lifestyle, so they become habits by the time we reach the end of the course.
I love it. And how can they learn more? I know that you have an email, Dr. L at rolemodelmaker.com. Is that right?
That's a good place to reach me at. Okay. So that definitely is one.
Okay. And then I know that you have a Facebook group, so I'll share that. That's once they join the program, and I'll put that in the chat box as well. So if you're on Facebook, you can join the group Mastering Healthy Eating, and then when you ask to join that, it'll ask for your email address, and then they'll send you information about how to join that program. But what else can they? How else can they find out more about Mastering Healthy Eating? Do you have a link that we can use?
I do have a link. That link, I can find it for you.
Okay. Or if they email Dr. L at rolemodelmaker.com, which is in that chat box, I'm sure that you can send that directly to them, and then we will have that sent out as well.
Okay. I guess I just wanted to mention before we move on that since we're talking about the program, because of the holiday season and the challenges, it kind of requires some extra hand-holding, and we are running a promotional on that. So you're more than welcome to email me, and I'll send you the link for what the course is regularly going for, which is $997, which actually is valued twice that. But basically, if you go on the site, you can go ahead and register for it at any time for $997. But because of the season, we're kind of trying to promote healthy eating and kind of help support the people. So we are offering a special price for the people. And usually when I do my promotional offers, I end up doing a $695 for the promotional offer. But I guess for this group that actually managed to be here before Thanksgiving and jump the gun.
Or like Black Friday. We gotta have a Black Friday special.
Yeah, I'll do a Black Friday special. I'll do it for $495.
Wow.
So.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, I'm excited about that because I know that a lot of people need it during this time, during the holidays, to get themselves, but also to get them shaped correctly in their eating habits and behaviors so that they can manage through the holidays. But as you say, this is a lifestyle. This is a lifestyle change where you can really incorporate it into your lifestyle. It's not like, okay, well, now I'm going to be on one of those food eating programs that you buy their food for the rest of your life or anything like that. This is a way that you can incorporate your taste, your flavors, your personality into an eating style that will give you the best brain optimization, the best body optimization, set a great example for your kids. Role model maker, I know that that's a passion of yours, to be able to create the next generation and to be able to have parents be the best possible role models they can be. And you've got 2 kids too. I know you're an amazing papa and a great role model to your own kids, that you feed them in accordance with these rules and expectations, and they seem to love your cooking from what I've heard. Is that right?
Right. I mean, they have about a dozen countries worth of cuisine that they eat, so they're not picky eaters by any means.
I love it.
And the level of activity that they have, I know that they would not be able to perform at the level and as many activities as if they weren't on this diet. And then the other part of it, I always talk about this, that when it comes to people talking about what does this diet do for them, I want you to think about the 80s and 90s and think about how you would go about doing everything that you do now without use of cell phones and internet. Being on this diet will help you with your focus, with your productivity, reduce, all the 3 o'clock brain fog and the morning difficulties.
How did you know? 3 o'clock brain fog was my thing. It was totally my thing. And now not so much. Now that, there's been so much change and so much positivity since I've, been able to incorporate this. And it's been a really cool change for me in that I know that this is something that I can feed my kids, I can encourage my family toward, and I can sustain for an undetermined length of time, because it's just something that you incorporate into your daily life. Correct. And no brain fog.
There you go. So yeah, the productivity and your performance goes to a completely different level, and that in itself is priceless. Basically, you look back. It's kind of like when you didn't have kids, and you're like, what did I used to do with my time? This is kind of like, how did I function before? Basically, it's a completely different level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, I do want to stick around here afterwards for Q&A. If anybody has any questions, we'll hang out here. But we are wrapping up now because we're just a little bit past the hour. And we do thank you guys so much for joining us. Sarah in San Diego, Barb in Indiana, Jerry in New York, David in Oregon, Paul in London, England. Thanks for joining us internationally. Terry, everybody else that joined, really appreciate you guys being here and being interactive. We're super glad and hope you got a lot out of it. I'm Kimberly. This is Dr. Ali Lankarani, and it's been a pleasure working with you guys today. Definitely grab an opportunity to get this program at the discounted Black Friday price. Thank you, Dr. L. And if you have any questions, you can email at drl@rolemodelmaker.com. Any final words for our group? And then we'll hang on. I'm going to end the recording, but we'll hang on for any questions and answers that people have.
Okay.
Any final words?
Just thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here.